When we talk about AI taking over the world, we usually focus on how robots and computers can do more of what we already do, like drive cars or perform surgery. But increasingly, AI is also starting to do things that were previously thought to require uniquely human abilities, like writing. Last week, the internet went viral over a story published by the New York Times Magazine about an engineer who created a keyboard that could help him text faster. It seemed like a pretty simple concept: keyboard that makes it easier to type messages with voice dictation, and auto-correction features similar to those that have long been part of Apple's operating system. But this keyboard was different because instead of learning from your own typing patterns, AI learns from the patterns of the entire internet. And then it uses that knowledge to try to predict what you're going to say before you even start typing. In practice, that means that when you send a message to someone, the keyboard will not only correct any misspellings, but it will also rewrite whole phrases and sentences in an attempt to express what you mean more clearly and succinctly. Sometimes this can be useful, like when the keyboard corrects "I am so tired" to "I'm so freaking exhausted." When you're retexting a friend, or it rewrites, "This is a really good book too. This is such a page-turner." When you're retweeting about a book you've just read, other times, it can be downright bizarre, like when a reporter for The Atlantic typed out a sentence describing his editor as fickle, and the keyboard changed it to "she was too busy to notice" without warning, without explanation, and without giving him the option to keep his original wording. For many people online, these kinds of changes felt uncomfortably close to what we usually associate with more advanced AI systems like auto-generating captions or rewriting news articles. In other words, we usually think of these things as something that happens on websites and apps, not on our own devices. So does this keyboard show that we're re-entering an age in which artificial intelligence will soon replace human writers? Or are people overreacting yet again to a technology that is far less sophisticated than it seems? To find out, I tried the keyboard for myself and asked some experts what they thought of it. When I first started using it, I was skeptical. Like a lot of people, I have grown accustomed to autocorrect, but I never really liked it. Often it will change things that I do and want it to change, and sometimes it will change things in ways that make no sense at all. So I was expecting this keyboard to be more of the same. But within a few minutes, I realized that it was something different. Not only did it do a better job of correcting typos and predicting what I was about to type, but it also made some bold stylistic choices, swapping out commonplace adjectives for more evocative ones, and simplifying or lengthening sentences, depending on the context. At first, I found these changes jarring. I would often delete what the keyboard had written and type my original phrase back in. But after using it for a while, I got used to it, and I started to appreciate its suggestions. Before long, I was using it on Twitter threads and lengthy email chains, finding myself relying on it to express what I wanted to say more accurately and elegantly than I could on my own. In short, I was experiencing many of the same feelings that the engineer behind the keyboard had described in his New York Times story. But I wasn't necessarily convinced that AI was to blame. When we look at the actual code underlying this keyboard, it turns out that most of the heavy lifting is being done by statistical language models called LLMs, which are not quite the same thing as artificial intelligence. Basically, LLMs are trained on vast amounts of text data, allowing them to learn the statistical relationships between words, and then generate new text based on the patterns they observed during training. This is how ChatGPT works, and most likely how Google's new conversational chatbot Bard works as well. But despite their similarities, chatbots and this LLM-powered keyboard are built to serve very different purposes. Chatbots are designed to produce fluent, coherent text given a starting prompt. Keyboards, on the other hand, are designed to predict what a user is going to type next, word by word. This makes chatbots more like creative writing tools and keyboards more like shorthand or telegraphic writing, a way to quickly get down the bare essentials of what you want to say, so that you can fill in the color and emotion later. The question is whether an AI-powered keyboard could be good enough to compete with existing non-AI solutions. And here it helps to understand what those solutions are in the first place. Most of us probably learned to type on QWERTY keyboards. The standard layout of letters found on almost every computer and phone keyboard today, these keyboards were designed more than 100 years ago, in part to prevent typewriters from jamming, but mostly to maximize profits for typewriter manufacturers. The result is a layout that is often frustrating for typists, forcing us to constantly reach for keys that are far apart or to slow down when we hit a word with lots of vowels. Over the years, companies have developed alternative keyboard layouts like the Dvorak keyboard, which places commonly used letters closer together, and the Colmac keyboard, which optimizes letter placement based on the frequencies of individual letters and common letter pairs. But despite their advantages, alternative keyboard layouts remain relatively uncommon. That's partly because switching to a new keyboard layout requires a significant investment of time and effort, and partly because QWERTY is so ingrained in our collective consciousness that most of us don't even realize there are alternatives. If AI-powered keyboards are going to succeed, they will have to overcome the same challenges. They will need to be fast and easy to use, and they will need to convince users that they are worth the time and effort required to learn something new. And there is reason to think they might be up to the task. Studies have shown that people can learn to type on alternative keyboard layouts in as little as 2 weeks, and they can maintain those skills over time. And the structure of these layouts means that words tend to flow more naturally from one finger to the next. In the long run, that could allow people to type faster and more accurately than they can on QWERTY keyboards. That said, whether a particular AI-powered keyboard is any good depends a lot on what exactly it has been trained on. If it has been trained on high-quality text data from reputable sources, it can generate text that is both accurate and elegant. But if it has been trained on lower-quality data, it can generate text that is riddled with errors and inappropriate for the context at hand. Unfortunately, the data sets used to train most publicly available LLMs are not particularly transparent. Usually, we only know that they are drawn from vast repositories of internet text and code. Because of that opacity, some researchers are calling for more scrutiny and regulation of LLMs. They worry that these systems will perpetuate and even amplify existing biases and harmful stereotypes if they are not carefully designed and monitored. Until recently, building LLMs was a largely academic exercise. Now that they are starting to appear in consumer products like keyboards, there will be a lot of pressure to make them safer, more reliable, and more user-friendly. Ideally, the results will be keyboards that allow us to communicate more effectively with one another. But regardless of what happens, it is clear that we are entering a new era in which software will play an ever greater role in shaping the way we write. Researchers and executives say that they hope this will give us more time to do the things that really matter, like spending time with friends and family or working on creative projects. Will it work out that way? Well, that depends on how much trust we are willing to put in these technologies. We are already relying on algorithms to curate our social media feeds and decide which videos get recommended to us next. Putting aside the question of whether those algorithms are doing a good job, it is not hard to see why people might be reluctant to hand over the reins of their communication too. There are plenty of examples of technologies that promised to make our lives easier only to end up doing the opposite. Early personal computers, for instance, were supposed to help us become more productive members of the digital age, but they ended up doing more to increase our workload and our stress levels than anything else. Whether AI-powered keyboards follow in those footsteps or go the way of word processors remains to be seen. Either way, it is going to be an interesting ride.